Hello, I'm James Ingram for Track2.com and AutoControls.org. The purpose of this short video is just to show an overview of a Hartland Locomotive Works Mack locomotive that has been converted to DCC with sound. I recently purchased this locomotive from Reindeer Pass, which is located out in Polk City, Iowa. The actual conversion was done by Mike Kidman from Reindeer Pass. What they did to this locomotive, they installed a Soundtraxx Tsunami DCC decoder in the locomotive with a speaker, an overhead rooftop strobe light. I kind of have a fetish for these things. I like them because when the locomotive's sitting still, you're still getting some action out of the thing, even though it's not moving. He also installed front and rear headlights on LED headlights on this locomotive. I've currently got them set for what I think they call Rule 17, where they're both on all the time. I just did that a minute ago, so in this video you'll see them operating both ways. But Rule 17 says both the front headlight and the rear headlight stay on all the time. I think that's CV 49 and 50 in this Soundtraxx Tsunami decoder. So in addition to the strobe lights, front and rear headlights, decoder, speaker, Mike also put this connector on the back for me at my request. This is the rear of the locomotive we're looking at. This is a little, I think it's a standard Aristocrat connector. Purpose of this thing, and I haven't used it yet, but the purpose of this thing is I can hook it up to another car with pickup wheels and deliver track power to the locomotive through this wire as well as the locomotive. This thing is a short wheelbase with doesn't have any sliders like the LGB locomotives does, so it does have a tendency to stall on the plastic frog of the switches if you're going through real slow. So that's the purpose of this wire, is to possibly improve future pickup. DCC system. Let's talk about amperages here for a minute. You think of the Soundtraxx Tsunami decoder as normally being used in HO engines, which is where I think I see it all the time. Putting it in a large-scale engine, something else. The Tsunami is rated for 1.0 amps maximum stall current, so you wouldn't normally use this in a large-scale engine because often they're pulling over 1.0 amps, but this thing doesn't apparently use too much amperage, and we'll try to demonstrate that with a little test. Sitting here right now with no sound on, it's pulling about 0.09 amps. I think you can see in the upper right hand corner of the power cab, it gives you an approximate amperage display. I took the other engine off the track back there, so this thing should be the only thing on the layout drawing power. Other than the accessory decoders and the mini panel over there, which I think take negligible current. Let's turn the sound on. With sound at idle, we're drawing about 0.11 amps. 0.13 with the horn. So what I'm going to do is start this thing up. You got to put a book in front of it. Basically block it. We'll crank it up to full speed, which is speed step 28. You see we're running up to about 0.72 amps maximum. So you can see, worst case, this thing doesn't go much over 0.78, around 0.8 amps. They still have 2.2 amps left worst case, and you wouldn't normally be sitting there spinning your wheels continuously like I'm doing. And my DCC advisor, Fred Cupp, tells me that even if you were to go over 1.0 amps for some reason, the Tsunamis have like an emergency overload protection. It'll just shut down to protect itself. Then you have to turn it off and turn it back on to get the decoder powered up again. So the bottom line is the Tsunami should have plenty of amperage capacity to run this little locomotive. Let's take a look at the amperage used by this engine in more or less normal operations. I've got a 4-car train on there, and we'll start it up with that train. It's about half an amp going at speed step 4. Let's get the direction shifted to forward. You can see the amperage looks, most of the time it's around a half an amp. I had 6 cars on this train earlier, and I think I was getting some wheel spin. I was getting up closer to around 0.7 amps. There's actually a YouTube video somebody made that shows one of these locos pulling like 10 cars or maybe even 15 cars on one of these engines, but I think he said he added some extra weight to the locomotive to pull that many cars. Normally when you see these operating on people's layouts, they're pulling small cars or short trains. Putting a DCC in a small wheelbase engine like this does have its considerations. You may notice we've been running it on the outside track where it goes through the turnouts when they're straight. What we found is on the inside track where it's running now, it tends to want to glitch in the forward direction on the switches. And this is always a problem with a short wheelbase engine, people tell me. When you see these Macks running on people's layouts, they're always, DC mode, and they're usually going along at a pretty good clip, so that a glitch is hardly noticeable. But with DCC, you can run at really low speeds, and if you lose contact, it is more noticeable. I'll just try to demonstrate that here. That's speed step 1. That's as slow as you can run this engine. You'd probably never see an engine going that slow that was analog, but obviously it can be with DCC. Now with speed step 1, I can often get through this switch with no hiccuping. You can see it went through there fine on speed step 1. Now we'll increase it to speed step 3. There's speed step 3. You can see it glitched, but it made it through the turnout. There's a way you can set these command stations so so that they resend the function commands, which is what we did here. Earlier, when it would glitch, it would keep the sound, but it would lose the strobe light on the roof and lose the headlight, and you'd have to go manually with the command station, turn them back on. You can set this thing, which we just did earlier, to keep resending those commands, so if it glitches on a turnout like you saw it do, as long as it doesn't completely stall out dead, if it keeps going like it did in this case, it'll usually pick up the headlight and pick up the strobe light and continue merrily on its way as it was before. But again, just a consideration when putting DCC in a short wheelbase engine such as this. One last thing to talk about would be the roof. This yellow Mack is a stock Mack. Normally there's apparently either tabs or screws that hold the roof onto the body. I can pick this up by the roof and no problem. In fact, I tried to take the roof off earlier, and it's so tight there that I couldn't even get it off. I was afraid to push any harder for fear of breaking the roof. Now on this DCC model, he had to run the wires in there for the LEDs for the headlights, so those tabs are no longer active. What I actually ended up doing was using a soldering iron to melt what was left of the tabs off of there. I was afraid of pushing down on those wires going to the headlight and disturbing the wiring, so I just got rid of those tabs entirely. But you do have a little bit of a modification around the roof. And in fact, if you look in here, you can kind of see there's a red light down in the decoder. You can actually see a red light on the decoder. It indicates this decoder is apparently getting power. I just turned the lights down in the room a little bit. You can see that that glow down kind of there where I'm pointing my finger. That's where the decoder is. You can see it's got it's emitting a red light, which I assume is basically just tells you the decoder's operating. Okay, we'll start this system up now. There's our first lap through the siding. Notice it didn't slow down or stop. It's now making its second lap. Now notice it's slowing down. Now you can see the train on the inside track is leaving in the opposite direction. And again, notice that train is going through the siding with no slowing down. There's its second lap through. Notice it's slowing down and stopping. Now you can see the Mack diesel on the outside track is making its second loop around the layout. There's the second loop, and again it's slowing down and stopping. And notice it comes in just about to that little piece of wood laying to the right side of it.